Welcome to Ed-VidenceRoom. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the lobby camera flickered, not enough for anyone to notice in real time, but enough to matter later. The kind of flicker old systems made when they were tired but still trying. The kind no one paid attention to until something went wrong. The man entered through the front doors with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed the moment in his head. He wore a dark hoodie pulled just low enough to shadow his face, jeans faded at the knees, sneakers that made almost no sound against the tiled floor. He didn't look at the camera. He didn't hesitate. He walked straight past the mailboxes and toward the stairwell, his left hand tucked into his pocket, his right arm swinging freely at his side. For a brief second, just before he disappeared up the stairs, the camera caught a slight hitch in his step, a limp so subtle it could have been fatigue, or nothing at all. 2 minutes later, at 2:19 a.m., a man walked back into the frame. To most people, it was the same man. Same hoodie. Same build. Same height. Same calm, unhurried pace. He exited through the same doors and vanished into the dark street beyond the glass. By sunrise, someone was dead. The building stood on the edge of downtown Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place people moved into temporarily and forgot they ever lived in. 4 floors, cracked beige walls, a lobby that smelled faintly of disinfectant and old paper. The security camera had been installed years earlier after a string of car break-ins, then quietly ignored once the neighborhood calmed down. No one ever checked the footage. No one needed to, until apartment 3B went silent. Emilia Hartman had lived there for just under a year. 29 years old. Marketing coordinator. No known enemies. She was the kind of person people described as nice when they didn't know what else to say. Paid her rent on time. Smiled politely in the hallway, occasionally brought groceries for Mrs. Langley downstairs when her arthritis flared up. When she didn't show up for work that morning and didn't answer her phone, her manager assumed she was sick. By afternoon, concern crept in. By evening, her sister drove over with a spare key. Emilia was found lying still in her living room, the TV dark, the curtains half drawn, the silence heavier than it should have been. There were no signs of forced entry. No broken furniture. No chaos. Just the unmistakable finality that something irreversible had happened. The police arrived quickly, and with them came certainty, the kind investigators fall into when a narrative seems to assemble itself. They reviewed the lobby footage within the hour. A man entered at 2:17 a.m. A man exited at 2:19 a.m. Emilia was dead inside that window. The story wrote itself. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Detectives enhanced what they could, zoomed into the face when the hood shifted just slightly under the lobby lights. It wasn't a perfect image, but it was enough for the internet. Someone recognized the jacket. Someone else recognized the walk. By midnight, a name surfaced. Jacob Reed, 32. Lived 3 blocks away. Worked nights at a warehouse. Had dated Emilia briefly the year before. The breakup hadn't been dramatic, but there had been arguments. Texts. Voicemails. Things people like to resurrect once tragedy demanded a villain. When police brought Jacob in for questioning, he looked like a man who had already lost something he didn't yet understand. He was exhausted, still wearing his work boots, his hands shaking slightly as he wrapped them around a paper cup of water. They told him they had footage. I didn't go to her place, he said quietly. They showed him the still frame. The hoodie. The silhouette. The timestamp. He stared at it for a long time, then he said nothing. Silence, in interrogation rooms, is often interpreted as guilt. The detectives thought they were watching a man realize he'd been caught. What they were actually watching was a man trying to understand how reality had slipped out of alignment. Jacob was arrested 2 days later. The news ran with the story eagerly. Murder suspect identified through CCTV, the headlines read. 3 days after Jacob's arrest, the case would have been sealed if not for a woman named Rachel Min. Rachel wasn't a detective. She wasn't even officially assigned to the case. She was a civilian technician who maintained the department's digital evidence systems. Story continues unchanged. One name appeared repeatedly in the days leading up to her death: Nathan Cole, 35. Real estate consultant. Married. Well-spoken, Rachel brought her findings to Detective Aaron Hale, who had worked homicide for 15 years and trusted patterns more than instincts. He listened politely. Skeptically. But when she overlaid the clips for him herself, something in his expression changed. They reopened the timeline. Emilia Hartman had texted someone at 11:42 p.m. "You can come up." That text had never been followed up on. The man on camera at 2:17 a.m. was not the first visitor that night. He was the cover. The truth, once it began unraveling, did so quietly. Painfully. With the kind of patience that feels cruel in hindsight, the building had a blind spot near the stairwell, an architectural flaw no one had cared about when the camera was installed. Anyone who hugged the wall at the right angle could move unseen between floors. Someone who knew the building could enter earlier, stay hidden, and wait. The real killer didn't need to come in on camera. He only needed to leave. They reviewed Emilia's recent calls and messages again. One name appeared repeatedly in the days leading up to her death, never flagged because it didn't fit the narrative anyone expected: Nathan Cole, 35. Real estate consultant. Married. Well-spoken. Someone Emilia had briefly worked with on a client project months earlier. Someone who had offered to catch up recently. Someone she trusted enough to let inside her apartment late at night. Nathan's car had been parked in the underground garage from 11:38 p.m. until nearly 3 a.m. He told police he'd fallen asleep watching TV in his car while on a call. The camera footage had protected him, because everyone had stopped looking. When confronted with the inconsistencies, Nathan didn't panic. He didn't deny the footage. He smiled faintly, as if impressed. "I knew the camera would be enough," he said. He explained it calmly, the way people do when they believe intelligence excuses everything. He had noticed the building's blind spots weeks earlier while visiting Emilia. He noticed how the camera framed the lobby but not the stairwell. Noticed how easy it would be to step into someone else's shadow. He waited until he heard footsteps downstairs. Waited until someone else entered the frame, then he followed. 2 minutes was all he needed. Jacob Reed was released the same day. The charges were dropped quietly. No press conference. No apology loud enough to drown out what had already been decided about him in the public imagination. Emilia Hartman was laid to rest under gray skies and unfinished questions, and the footage that everyone had trusted without hesitation, was archived, labeled, and stored away. It never showed the murder, it never showed violence, it only showed how easily the truth can be rearranged when people believe cameras don't lie, because cameras don't think, people do, and sometimes, that's far more dangerous. If you had seen that footage first, without knowing the ending, without slowing it down, without questioning the assumptions handed to you, would you have noticed, or would you have believed it too?